surprised.
Well, first of all, one thing that Western media is not stressing is that they bombed apartment blocks in Tehran and in different parts of the city, and lots of people, women, children, were murdered. Um, the damage is clear. I was on Sky News, and I was supposed to have an interview with the BBC afterwards. And as soon as my Sky News interview finished, I think because of what I said, BBC canceled. But what I was saying, because Sky News was trying to stress the military aspect of it, and I was saying they targeted people in their homes, they targeted women and children. Uh, it's just like in Lebanon when they were carrying out the genocidal attacks, or in Gaza. You see, we've seen so many films where little kids were thrown out of buildings. That's what happened in Tehran early this morning. And of course, the the attack was unprovoked, but Western media speaks as if this is normal, and that is the new normal because the Israeli regime can slaughter and kill and attack whoever it wants, whenever it wants. There's a lot of exaggeration. There's a lot of footage out there that claims that all sorts of assets of Iran are destroyed. A lot of that is bogus. Damage has There is damage, and some assets have been destroyed, but it's not at all like what is being said. Iran's key assets are deep underground, but since they murdered senior state officials and military officials, the Iranians have to regroup. Now, some could say that Iran made the mistake of allowing their senior military officials to be exposed this way. I agree. I don't know why that happened, but they were immediately replaced, and so we'll have to see. Right now, I'm guessing, and of course, I'm not military and I'm not in the government, but I'm guessing that Iran, after it regroups, it prepares itself, the responses will begin, and I assume that it will not take very long.
Well, when you say response, Professor Marandi, what kind of response do we expect here? Because Israel and the United States right now are really thumping their chests, especially Israel, because the United States is trying to plausibly deny their involvement. But Israel right now is thumping their chest. They're saying they're going to be doing this for quite a while. So, what kind of response can we be expecting?
Well, first of all, the Americans are deeply involved, and it's not just the Americans. Regional countries are assisting. Uh, Radar bases in Turkey, in Qatar, in the Emirates, in Bahrain are all being used um, in order to assist the Israelis both in their offensive capabilities as well as their defensive capabilities. And US bases are being used across the board for logistical purposes. Uh, it's also, I think, quite evident that the Europeans are supporting this attack. The French have basically said that the Israelis have a right to defend themselves. So that I I find extraordinary that they would openly say that. And the head of the IAEA, he refuses to condemn the Israeli attack on Iranian nuclear sites. So that says a lot about the nature of this body, too. But I think the nature of the Iranian response will depend on the battlefield. There's no doubt that there will be a heavy response to the Israeli regime. But with regards to the Persian Gulf, the United States, its bases, I think there will be an assessment on what sort of role the United States plays. So if Trump is sane, he will stay out of this, but who knows? But I think for the moment, what is clear is that Iran is going to respond to the Israelis. It is quite interesting how there are some people out there who pretend to be pro-Palestinian, but they seem to be very happy to see the Israelis bomb Iran. They're not that many, but I think it exposes a great deal about the nature of some of these so-called Palestinian supporters.
Well, this has been a problem for a long time where Iran, we had Syria before this, of course, Iraq, we can go back, but Libya too. I mean, over and over and over again, we've had kind of this regime change narrative of these regimes are this and they're that, they're corrupt. Thus, they are deserving of being overthrown, of course, without any real knowledge, especially in the combined West led by the United States, of what Iran as a society really is. Iran, you said, has a lot of assessing to do. You said there was a lot of exaggerations. What exactly is the damage here? You talked about these are war crimes, the civilians being targeted. There's talks and reports of nuclear sites having been targeted. And some are saying that a lot of Iran's defenses and even its capabilities have been targeted and devastated. So what's your understanding of this, given these reports?
Well, without a doubt, these are war crimes. They're targeting. They've targeted civilians. They've slaughtered women and children. That's it. The evidence is there. They weren't showing it in the Western media this a few hours ago, but I did tweet it. Others did tweet it, so that people would see it. I pointed this out on Sky News because they were saying this has to be verified, and I said, well, people can go to my Twitter account. But then Sky News was showing streets with taxis under rubble and that sort of thing, and it was quite obvious what had happened. So they were striking civilian targets. Iran's assets, as I said earlier, they're being targeted. But Iran is a huge country, and it has enormous capabilities, and those capabilities are, for the most part, underground. So I think right now the main issue in Iran is for the new leadership to prepare itself for the coming hours and coming days. And then we will see an Iranian response. A lot of this is psychological warfare. And there are, for example, images online that are AI. There are images that don't have anything to do with Iran. There are images taken like one strike from different perspectives, from different angles, and they're presenting it as multiple strikes. So there's a lot of psychological warfare going around, and Western media is assisting this. From what I've seen, I haven't seen too much, but throughout the day when I've seen bits and pieces, they're constantly repeating the Israeli narrative. That's how they support them, and they make it look like they have these enormous operations in Iran, which are nonsense. They've been saying that they have these Mossad teams in Iran and carrying out. That's for the movies. The damage has basically been done through missiles, and the Americans. Trump is very happy about the role that he's played in all this. But we'll have to see what Iran does in response. I think this time tomorrow it'll become clearer.
This is an ongoing war, Professor Marandi. You've been on my channel many times. You're a deep friend of this show, but many people in the audience have been very concerned about this being the end game. And so, do you see this as right now the end game? Has Israel, with the United States' help, have they initiated this unthinkable war that we've been talking about? That this has been the goal all along, was to spark a war with Iran. Is it here now?
Well, the animosity towards Iran for the last 4.5 decades has all been about Palestine. It's not Iran's nuclear program. It's not anything else. It's all about Palestine. That's why the Americans have no problem with any of the countries in the Persian Gulf. They have no problem with Erdogan. They have no problem with Abdullah in Jordan or Sisi in Egypt. Their problem is Iran, and that's because Iran is supporting the Palestinian cause and has been doing so for many years. So obviously, the Americans would like to undermine Iran. The Israeli regime would like to undermine Iran. And we've seen evidence of that in the past. Wesley Clark, his the famous clip that he had about the different wars that the United States wishes to pursue. So obviously that is a factor. That is true. That this is an attempt to bring about regime change. But Iran is a very powerful country. It's a very resilient country, and the West has many vulnerabilities, and the Israeli regime does too. We shouldn't be captured by their psychological warfare. And we all have to do what we have to do to create awareness, to remind people that as this war is going on, they continue the genocide in Gaza, daily killing murders in Lebanon, literally daily murders in the West Bank too, regular bombings in Syria. So and of course, they're trying to destroy Iranian nuclear sites and create contamination, which can be deadly. So they are willing to do literally anything. And the Western media, just as it has been complicit in Gaza, trying to justify the Holocaust, they will do the same in Iran. They will carry out psychological warfare. They will try to demoralize the resistance. They will try to exaggerate the strength of the Israeli regime, and Western regimes will do what they can for them. It's not easy. It's never been easy. The days ahead will not be easy, but we do what we have to do, and we have a responsibility to remain steadfast for those people who are being slaughtered in Gaza. And we should ignore those sectarian people who are either on the payroll or who've been just brainwashed, we have to all the focus has to be on the Israeli regime and on its Western backers and the crimes that they're committing across the board.
This is a major escalation, of course, and Iran has been dealt, of course, significant hits. But it appears that the United States and Israel are making the assumption that they have succeeded in weakening Iran to the point where they won't have to suffer consequences. We've been talking a lot about this conflict and war on Iran as a result of everything that you said, that a war in Iran would be devastating. Is this still the case, or is Israel and the United States, do they have reason to believe that they have succeeded in getting a step closer to their ultimate goal of regime change?
No, I don't think that they're anywhere near regime change. And Iran is a very powerful and resilient country. I think that one of the problems in the West is that they believe their own propaganda. And they constantly say that Iran is weak, Iran is vulnerable, Iran is falling apart, and all we have to do is give it one extra push and it will be finished. But I think that the days ahead will show that what the Americans are doing is not in their interest. What the Israeli regime is doing is not in the interest of the regime. It's in the interest of Netanyahu, but not in the interest of the regime. One day of fighting with a lot of or bombing with a lot of psychological warfare, I don't think is going to change the reality on the ground.
Professor Marandi, what do you know about what is happening as we speak? And do you see Israel being capable, with US's help, of continuing to strike Iran? Because that could definitely hinder Iran's response.
Well, war is war, Danny, and the Israelis and the Americans will be doing their best and the West and their regional allies, directly or indirectly, they'll be doing their best to help the Israelis weaken Iranian capabilities. That's what we've been seeing in Ukraine for a very long time. Of course, the Americans are giving the Israeli regime weapons that they'd never give to Ukraine. That is a big difference. What they have, what the Israelis have, is far better and more advanced than what Ukraine has. But Iran is a very powerful country, and as I said, let's give the military some time. They will regroup, and we'll see over the coming 2 or 3 days how things play out. Iran is patient. Iran is powerful. Iran will prepare itself, and it will punish the regime when the time comes.
If you could elaborate on not only what kind of power you're talking about with regard to Iran, because I think people assume that this is strictly military power, but at the same time, seeing the forest from the trees here, which is that the United States and Israel right now are attempting to launch a war that is absolutely devastating to everybody in the world, especially those in the region, especially the Palestinians who have relied on Iranian support. I think at times like this, that perspective often gets lost when the Israeli and US propaganda machine is at its highest and most intense level of operation as we speak.
Well, it's for me. I've said this before on your show, I think, and that is that we have a responsibility, regardless of what the situation is anyway. Whether the enemy has the upper hand, whether the genocidal monsters have the upper hand in Gaza or in any other arena or any other battlefield, uh, we have a responsibility to do what we have to do. And so that aside, a lot of this is psychological warfare. Remember when the Americans began their assault on Yemen, we were told that they're degrading Yemen's capabilities and Yemen is falling apart. And Ansar Allah, what the Americans call the Houthis, they're finished. And then after a month, we saw that the Americans had to back down and they effectively capitulated. And they did a deal which was clearly a sign of that capitulation. So be I wouldn't allow this psychological warfare to to affect my thinking. If I was your audience, uh, the Israelis were supposed to take Gaza a long time ago. The resistance was supposed to fall apart a long time ago. It hasn't, and the Israeli regime is despised across the world. It is exhausted, and let's give Iran some time and see what Iran can do. And I'm pretty sure that Iran will make the regime pay a heavy price and that it will make the regime regret what it did. Now, some people may say that Iran should have carried out True Promise 3. I've heard that a lot from different people. But there are reasons why that was, there are technical reasons why the Iranians did not do it back then. I'm not a decision maker, so it, it wasn't my decision for me to defend it or not. But I think that after the Israeli regime struck last time, the Iranians wanted to make some changes after True Promise 2 and after the Israeli regime struck. They wanted to have extra preparations for their missile and drone capabilities, but also their defenses and protecting their assets for such a day as today. So I think Iran probably was buying time to prepare itself further in case the United States gets involved, because that is I think the key question right now. But in any case, whether Iran should have carried out True Promise 3 back then or not, the Iranians are preparing themselves for a response, and I think that response will be coming. I'm sure that response will be coming.
I mean, it is a long, protracted war, and Israel has initiated with the United States. Let's just put it very clearly. Israel is nothing without the United States. So Israel doing this means that the United States is at war. And it's so interesting, Professor Marandi, that I've been saying this to every one of those who I've been talking to about this, is we have seen that the Trump administration, Donald Trump himself, on April 11th, said that Iran must capitulate to our terms or else. And then what happens on June 11th? Israel conducts this operation. Now we know that this has been being planned in the making. The United States is using Israel as its conduit to wage war and to exact what not only is concessions from Iran, but really what the United States really wants, which is Iran to be a regime that will fall and that has fallen and crushed.
If Iran was like Turkey, if Iran was like Egypt, or if Iran was like Jordan or the Emirates, the United States would have no problem with Iran whatsoever. Iran's sin is that it supports the Palestinian people. That's been its sin all along. All of this is about Iran's stance on Palestine and Iran's support for the Palestinian people. That is it basically.
I think it has to be noted that none of this is about Iran and nuclear weapons, Iran preparing for nuclear weapons. Israel has been saying for many decades that Iran is on the precipice of a nuclear weapon. And it seems like now is just the time that this pretext, that this narrative is being used to finally launch, although Iran is no stranger to other acts of war against it, but finally launch a major act of war, a dangerous escalation that could lead us in a catastrophic global conflagration. Your reaction to this, because how many months has it been of the Trump administration where all we've been hearing about is Iran can't have a nuclear weapon, Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. Now we're seeing the fruits of this. It was all to lead to a moment of this dangerous war. Your final thoughts on where we are and where we're heading.
Absolutely. Netanyahu has been saying this for 30 years. And for 30 years, he's been saying it's months away, a couple of years away. And the West knows this. And if Western media had any independence, if it had any decency, if these journalists had any decency, they would be repeating uh, this constantly for their viewers, that Netanyahu has been lying about the Iranian nuclear program for many decades, and so has the United States. And as I said, the issue is not the Iranian nuclear program. We have International Atomic Energy Agency experts in Iran all the time. The very same sites that they bomb are sites that International Atomic Energy Agency experts go to. So it's obvious that nothing has changed. There's no move towards some nuclear weapon. Otherwise, these IAEA experts would have seen it and they would have reported it. But the West will basically repeat Israeli lies. Remember when the Israelis bombed the first hospital, Western media and even Western intelligence agencies were saying the Palestinians did it because they were trying to cover for the regime. But then they began to bomb more and more hospitals and destroy all the hospitals and kill babies in incubators. And then they just moved on. They stopped trying to uh, lie for the regime, and they basically tried to ignore these crimes against humanity. So this is the same thing. They will repeat Netanyahu's lies and justify his actions by making Iran seem like some sort of threat to humanity. But people are waking up. The world is very different now from what it was, I think, 20 years ago, but time will tell.